fits like a glove. Well, one of them at least. Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Masterverse, the Master Universe new Eternia, Fisto. It's a thrilling time to be a Master Universe fan. For longtime fans and for a new generation of kids who love the action and adventure, it's time to discover the thrilling action and adventure of He-Man, Skeletor, the secrets of Castle Grayskull, and so much more. You know, with all the silver that he has on that limb of his, I don't know if we should be calling him Fisto or Arm-O. I realized quickly how stupid of a name that was. Stop that. Let's go ahead and take the tape measure instead and see how tall the new Revelations offering of Fisto is before we bring in other Fistos. You have more? I have more. Let's take the tape measure as promised. Going right to the very top of one of his two heads, this version of Fisto is 7¼ inches in height, or he's going to stand at 18½ centimeters tall. Yes, another member of the Fistos Club. Wait, what? Here's one of the offerings that we did get from the Revelations release. One thing, though, very apparent is the new one that we get here from New Eternia is considerably taller. And I didn't realize he would be this tall until I had the two standing next to each other. Considerably taller than the one from Revelation. He's even, in fact, a lot taller, I mean, goes without saying, than the Origins version of Fisto. So if you're looking to scale the ones in size with the Revelations, you might notice right away, yeah, the new Eternia variety is a tad bit. A lot more than just a tad. Considerably taller. He's also considerably taller than one of his colleagues, his friend of his, that's obviously Clamp Champ. Here's also what the figure looks like with Ram Man. Here's also what he looks like with the new Eternia release of Man-at-Arms. And I did also want to bring in Thunder Punch He-Man. If you have been following along this channel, you know the one I ordered from Amazon, unfortunately, was missing its sword. I finally got a new He-Man replacement. I'm going to put it right over there. When you know it, though, with all this talk of not having a proper sword, now that I have a sword, don't I now realize that it's starting to chip away the paint? For all the times, well, the few times I've done this at least, putting this sword in this blasted shield, you can see where it makes the point of impact right there. Right there. And boy, wouldn't you know it started to scrape away the paint. But at least I got myself a new Thunder Punch He-Man complete with this sword, so at least that's saying something. As for saying something, I'll be saying quite a lot when it comes to Fisto's accessories. First, the figure does come included with, strangely though, a sword. When I think of Fisto, swords may not be the first thing that pops into my head. The guard and the hilt is done in purple, while meanwhile the blade is all done here in silver. He can hold it, providing you already go into the little baggy sword inside the compartment space. Make sure you go over that. Whatever you do, make sure all the accessories are also there as well. From what I would imagine, I would think that I've gotten everything here with Fisto, but wouldn't you know it, knowing my luck, something's missing. But go into that little baggie. What you'll find, though, instead is not the sword, but you'll also get a swappable hand. I've taken liberty measures of already removing the hand that he had, so what would have already been on the figure would have been a closed fist. I divorced that. Took that off right away. I'm probably just going to be putting it back in a bag somewhere. If I don't have any plans to have him holding the sword, I'll certainly have having plans holding the big giant hammer. What? A hammer? So we'll go ahead and we'll just get the sword in his hand first of all. The hand just basically clips around there. Super, super easy. You can also as well take the sword, and if you would believe this, there's some storage space on the figure. Just simply spin the figure around. Located, I feel, a little too high up on the figure's armor. There's an open loop right here that you basically take the sword. You don't have to do it with the sound effects or not. And slide the sword in place. I will say right away, it's way too high. I feel like it should have been probably a little bit down here. I mean, I don't have a bodybuilder's body, but I can tell you there's no way that Fisto would be able to retrieve that sword. You could pull a prank on a bodybuilder, just don't tell him I did it, or told you to do it. You could put a little kick-me sign in the back, they'd never be able to reach it. I mean, like, just impossible. Maybe he can barely hold on to the sword. He'd have to kind of grab onto the loop, if anything else. Maybe he'd be able to reach it. I think it's very unlikely. Come on, I mean, like, who are we kidding here? He wouldn't be obviously able to also grab it with this side of his arm either, because this arm, unlike this one, only has a single hinge. What's a little bit more impressive than a blasted sword is the figure also comes included with this cool-looking hammer. One side looks like it's a dreidel. The other side looks like Man-at-Arms' mace. It's cast here in a very marbleized silver plastic. At least, though, the handle down below has been wrapped in purple to match the colors. He seems to really like purple. Again, you can also take this, and you can put this into the figure's hands. Much more of a preferred weapon, if you ask me, than some stupid-looking sword. I know I shouldn't say stupid. Put that into his hand, and because, again, like this figure does have a double hinge in his elbow, you can straddle that hammer across his shoulders. Very, very cool. You know what? Let's just take the sword without the sound effect. Too late. Beat you to it. Go ahead and just have the figure displayed like that would be prime for me. Of course, he does also have a swappable head, too. One thing I do want to talk a little bit about before we start swapping out heads. I'll just move that hand out of the way here for a second. One thing I really was interested to find on the hammer is if you look at the hammer, and I'm already talking about the point and the mace, both of these can actually be detached. So basically what you just do is you grab the mace end. You don't have to take off both if you don't want to, but you just take off the point. Now, again, that really does look like a dreidel now. We'll just basically put this down for a second here. Looking at his fist, you're probably thinking the same thing that I'm thinking. The fist itself, well, again, it looks a little alarming, the fact that the entire arm is painted in silver. Again, like if you're going to call him Fisto, it really should, again, just be fist, not the entire arm. Anyways, though, what you can do, though, is you can take the fist off like that, and then you can replace it with any of those two parts from the hammer. So again, if you want to give him a drill attachment, just attach that onto the hole like that. Or go ahead and something similar to Man-at-Arms. You can take the mace ball and put that on the end as well. I mean, would that now change the name of him? Would it be Fisto anymore, or would it be Meso? We're just coming up with stupid name after stupid name, aren't we? But I think that's kind of cool. And I'm sure you're also wondering, too, how's the fist look on the end of his hammer? I mean, it's as good as a hammer on the end of a... I mean, it's as good as a fist on the end of a hammer would actually look. And, of course, you can get the other end of that. Just pop that in place. The fist... I don't know if it's just the fact I've got moisturizer on my hands, but there we go. Does that look a little strange and weird, the fact he's got a fist on the end? No more stranger than the fact that you can change out his hands out here with, again, a little drill attachment, I guess, and a mace ball on the other end. But that's kind of a cool feature. Just go ahead and pop that off right now. Meso. Let's put the hand back in place. There we go. The one other thing that also comes included with Fisto, it seems to be just as difficult to stay in place as his fist. The figure does have, first of all, a defaulted head, which I will say right away, that's a nice-looking Fisto. A different interpretation it is. I mean, obviously he's got a headdress now that matches the rest of his armor, a longer beard, a little gray there, affects us all. I think the head sculpt's really good on this. He's got the ponytail there on the back. There's no posability at all to the ponytail. But unfortunately, though, just with the quarters of being occupied by the shoulder pads here, there's really no way that you can really get much going when it comes to his head rotation. That's as far as it's going to go. Did you miss it? No, you didn't miss it. That's as far as it's going to go. You can try to force it around, but it's not going to be going anywhere. Granted, yes, you also get yourself an alternate head sculpt. The thing about it, though, is when you're looking at the two heads, this is a little bit more closer to, if you like the classic look to Fisto, short of the fact he doesn't have red hair. That's a bit of a bummer. It also seems like this head is considerably smaller. Now, again, if I'm looking at the features, the eyes and the size and nose placement seems to be the exact same spot. And yet, this illusion gets lost the moment you change the head out. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to pop the head off. We're going to replace it with this head sculpt. And I'm just going to put it down for a second. Just going to put it down. Everybody step back for a second and look at this. Does it look like the head is too small for the rest of his body? And yet, though, maybe it's just the fact that he had the longer beard that sort of gave him a much kind of longer face as a result of it. But it does seem like now that I've changed out the head, his head is smaller, isn't it? Now, one thing that's kind of cool, though, if you happen to have the other Fisto, say if you like red beard, red-haired Fisto, and you want to use this head sculpt instead, it happens to be using the exact same size ball joint. So even though, again, like his body is just off proportioned, if you wanted to, just pop this head sculpt off, replace it with the new Eternia, or I guess the Revelations version of Fisto, and you can get this look instead. Which, though, looking at it, I don't know what it is. It seems like his head works a little bit better for the body, at least from the size of his head, to then this one. I mean, obviously, that's not the head that he comes... Oh, and also, too, if you guys want to see what this looks like on regular Revelations Fisto, it does work there as well. So let's just pop that off. We'll put it off to the side. A decapitated Fisto for at least right now. Pop that off. Put the new head sculpt back in place. All the times that I've tried doing this too, popping the head and putting it onto the ball joint, I always feel like when I go to rotate the new head, the head keeps continuing to pop off the ball joint. And this has happened every time. I mean, I know how a ball joint works, and I certainly know how a socket works, and yet putting the two together, every time I want to turn the head, it just seems like it keeps popping off. I'm going to have to put a little bit more pressure behind that. And while that hopefully stays in place, let's look at the rest of the armor here for Fisto. Again, a lot of very similar aspects to this Fisto. Of course, minus, let's put the head back in place. I know if I don't put the head in place, I'm going to only ultimately lose it. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the bodies, very similar in the purple. You got similar style of shoulders, although this one's a little bit more broader. will say one thing I do like about the new Fisto is the metallic use of this purple paint. Of course, the regular Fisto or the Revelations variety had a little bit more of a matte purple. Again, like the arm is about, I don't want to sound like the guy that's sort of stuck in the past, but again, if you're going to call him Fisto, I really live with that. Don't go and just redesign the character's idea so the entire arm is mechanical like this, because it loses. I know fist is down here. Technically, we shouldn't really be looking at arm and just say that, well, why would you call him Fisto? Because clearly he's still a guy that's known for having a big, giant, menacing fist. But I would have just, again, rathered if this not had been mechanical. Keep this part at least similar to this arm over here and only had this arm. I know. Just my own personal preference more than anything else. It's got some nice fur that they've sculpted on the sides. I mean, it does cause a little bit of problems when it comes to rotating the arms all the way around. You can certainly feel when you're trying to turn the arm that it doesn't get all the way around for the job. You can also as well detach the armor. I mean, ultimately, really what you'll only be going to see underneath is probably just a standard He-Man body. Again, that would just only detach on the side and on the side. Am I going to do it? I'm just going to leave it. Just leave it for right now. The one thing that's also different, too, is that if you're looking at the loincloths, the belt is very much different. There's a little bit of additional texturing that they've also added there. You can see some artistic interpretation around those orbs. This has a little bit more of a cleaner looking belt. Loincloths seem to be also maybe the same, but it looks like they're also maybe sharing the same boots, although they flip the colors around. So instead of a purple boot with brown fur, the new release of Fisto now has a brown boot and purple fur instead. Now, for the figure's articulation, we're going to struggle a little bit here when it comes to head sculpt. Yes, it does, in theory, rotate back and forth, but, again, like for me, rotating the head only results in the head popping off the ball joint. The arms do rotate all the way around, whether you want to use this arm or use this arm as the example. It does rotate all the way around. You can bring the arm out. This one does have a swivel in the bicep. This, on the other hand, though, does have a double hinge on the elbow. This elbow does not. I will say, though, it's kind of interesting the way they've sculpted the arm elbow here. So while it does lose, unfortunately, one articulation point, it does have at least gained a pretty neat-looking elbow joint. One thing, too, you can also rotate the arm back and forth here as well. I don't know if that means you could probably detach this hand and use it with another Fisto. I haven't tried it myself, just for the risk that potentially could break that joint. And then the hand also rotates all the way around on this side. Because it's only just a peg, you can't hinge the hand back and forth. This is all as much as you can really do with it. You still got the waist swivel. The legs do split out. Ball joints working behind the scenes. 3/4 of the way up the thighs, the swivel cut. That rotates all the way around. Double hinge on the knee. Articulation in the ankle, or I guess the top of the boot. And then for the ankles, back and forth rock, back and forth this way as well. The figure does also have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. I know for a fact I haven't mentioned that yet. I'm mentioning it right now. Again, bringing back in the Revelations Fisto, it wasn't until I got this guy the packaging I realized such the size difference, and clearly a size difference between this one and also the Origins release. The body size isn't so much a bad thing, but I think the moment you start to get a body that big, I mean, even again, just to compare him with Man-at-Arms, I feel like maybe the body being this size that it is, they also need to keep that in mind when it came to factoring the size of the head. I feel like the head works okay with a body like this, but I think the moment you take a body and you put it on a larger, or take a head and you put it on a larger body like this, it results, I'm getting tongue-tied here. It results in sort of now the head looking too small for the rest of his body. It wasn't certainly the case when we've looked at this version of Fisto. It clearly seems to be more the case when we're looking at the one from New Eternia. While I would say that 75% of me likes the look of New Eternia Fisto, 25% of me, on the other hand, is still bothered by the fact that I feel like his head is too small for the rest of his body. This wasn't as much the issue when we had the defaulted head, and may have had also something to do with that he had so much more hair on the front of his face, that maybe just the illusion of a longer beard made it look like his head was properly sized for the rest of his body. That the moment you change that out and give him a slightly shorter beard, I mean, he still has quite a lot of beard on his face, it just is the one thing that now is the thing I'm constantly looking at. Maybe, yes, I could have preferred to have more just a fist on Fisto rather than an entire cybernetic arm. That at least is one thing as an interpretation that, as the New Eternia goes, they're taking sort of the ideas of the classic characters and they're taking new spins on them. So the new spin on Fisto having an entire robotic arm works with me. Just not having the head the way it's designed like this doesn't. The head, funny enough, would have worked a lot better with the size of body for the Revelations, because the Revelations are shorter figures. The moment you put a head that would have accommodated both scales on a body that clearly isn't that scale, I feel like it's that causes the head to look way too small. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Do you think that Fisto's head is way too small? How much of a percentage? Let me know down below. If you, though, 100% enjoyed this video, do it a solid and throw it a like. If you guys want to stick around for more so, I hope so. Hit that subscribe, turn on that bell. But the most important thing is that you're coming back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.